He changed the locks on a Tuesday. I know it was a Tuesday because I'd just come back from my standing hair appointment at the salon on Maple, the one I've kept every third Tuesday for 11 years. My stylist Finette does my colour and we talk about everything and nothing, and I always leave feeling like myself again. That day, I remember I was in a good mood. I had a bag of groceries in the crook of my arm, chicken thighs, sweet potatoes, the good butter, and I was humming something I couldn't name as I walked up the porch steps. My key didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I stood there for a moment with the grocery bag pulling at my elbow, thinking I'd made some kind of mistake. I had lived in that house for 22 years. I had painted the front door myself, a deep navy blue, the summer my husband passed. I knew that lock, the way I knew my own hands. I set the groceries down on the porch and tried one more time. Still nothing. My grandson was the one who finally opened the door, after I rang the bell twice. He looked surprised to see me standing there, which struck me as strange, because it was my house. He was 19, and he had his mother's eyes, and for a second I just looked at him, waiting for him to say something that made sense. "Grandma," he said. "Hey, I didn't know you were coming back so soon." I didn't know I was coming back so soon, as if I needed a schedule to enter my own home. "The key didn't work," I said. He shifted his weight. He looked over his shoulder, back into the hallway, and then back at me. "Yeah," he said, "Mom had it changed. Said the old one was getting sticky." I picked up my groceries and walked inside. My name's Cecelia, and I'm 67 years old, and I have made many mistakes in my life. I will tell you right now some of what happened I allowed. I am not a woman who avoids hard truths, even when the hard truth is about myself. After my husband Raymond passed, 6 years ago now, cardiac arrest, very sudden, no warning, I was alone in a house that had always been full. We had raised 2 children in those rooms, my daughter Monique and my son who lives out in Phoenix. Raymond had built the deck out back with his own hands. There was a groove in the kitchen floor from where he used to pull his chair out every morning to sit with his coffee. For about a year, I was very quiet. I learned how to be in the house without him. It took longer than I expected. Then Monique called and said she and her husband were having some trouble. "Financial trouble," she said, which I later learned was a softer word for the situation than it deserved. He had left a job. There had been some decisions made. I still don't know all of them, and they were behind on their apartment lease and needed somewhere to land while they sorted things out. She asked if she and her husband and her son could stay with me for a while. I said yes. Of course I said yes. She is my daughter. That was 3 years before the Tuesday my key stopped working. In the beginning it was fine. It was more than fine, honestly. It was good to have the house filled again. My grandson was 16 when they moved in, and he was quiet and polite and would sometimes sit with me in the evenings while I watched my programs. Monique and I cooked together on Sundays the way we used to when she was young. It felt for a while like something that made sense. Her husband. I will call him what the family called him, which was just the husband, though not with affection, not after a while. He was cordial at first. Polite enough. He shook my hand when he moved boxes in and said he appreciated my generosity and that they would be out of my hair in no time. 3 years later, he had an opinion about the thermostat. I don't mean that as a metaphor, though it works as one. I mean that literally. He began adjusting the thermostat to temperatures I found uncomfortable, and when I mentioned it, he looked at me with a particular expression I came to know well over those years. Patient, slightly tolerant. The expression a person makes when they believe they are managing someone older and slower than themselves. "It's better for the house," he said. "Keeps the utility bills down." I paid the utility bills. My name was the one on the account, had been for 22 years. But I let it go. I let a lot of things go in those early months because I thought it was temporary, and because Monique seemed happier when things were calm, and because I did not want to be the kind of mother who causes problems. That is the part I have to own. I set no timeline. I asked for no rent, no contribution to utilities, no formal arrangement of any kind. I told myself it would resolve itself. It did not resolve itself. Things without boundaries rarely do. By the second year, he was receiving mail at my address. His car was registered to my address. He had set up his home office in what had been Raymond's study, the room I had kept mostly untouched because it still smelled faintly of the cedar oil Raymond used on his woodworking tools. I came in one afternoon and the smell was gone. New furniture, a standing desk, a ring light for video calls. I stood in the doorway and I felt something shift in me, but I still didn't say anything. I went back to the kitchen and I made tea and I sat by the window and I told myself it was just a room. It was not just a room, but I told myself that. The change in him was gradual, and then it was not gradual at all. By the third year, he spoke to Monique differently when I was in the room. Quieter. Like he was factoring me in, like I was a variable that changed his calculations. He began doing things without asking. Not just the thermostat, but the cable package, the garage storage, the backyard where Raymond's garden used to be. He put down concrete pavers over the soil. He didn't mention it. I came home one day, and Raymond's garden was gone, and there was a neat grey patio in its place. I should have said something then. I know that. Even now, sitting with the clarity that comes after everything resolved, I know I should have said something the day of the pavers, but Monique had that look she got when she was bracing for conflict, tight around the jaw, eyes slightly down, and I thought, not today. I'll find another way. There was no other way. There was only the direction things were going. What I didn't fully understand until much later was that his behavior had a logic to it. It wasn't random. He was testing what I would allow, and every time I allowed something, the next thing came a little sooner, a little larger. I had taught him through my own silence that there were no consequences. That was on me. I have thought about it many times, and I come to the same conclusion every time. I taught him he could. The lock was a Tuesday in September. I stood in my own kitchen that evening, and I understood, with a stillness that surprised me, that something had ended. Not my patience, that had been eroding for over a year. Something else, some last softness I had been protecting, the part of me that wanted to believe it would turn back into what it had been in the beginning. I made dinner. Chicken thighs with sweet potatoes, because I had bought them and I was not going to let them sit. I set 3 plates because my grandson was home and Monique came in around 6, and for a while we ate in the ordinary way. Families eat when no one is saying what they're thinking. Her husband came home at 7:15. He came into the kitchen and looked at the stove and said, "There's no plate for me." "I didn't know your schedule," I said. He looked at Monique. She looked at her plate. "It would be helpful," he said, "to no one in particular, and to me specifically, if we coordinated better in this house. In this house." His choice of words was always deliberate. "The lock was changed today," I said. "The old cylinder was worn out," he said. "I got a good deal on a new one." "I'd like a key," I said. "We'll get you one made," he said. He took a beer from my refrigerator and walked into Raymond's study and closed the door. Monique kept her eyes on her plate. My grandson excused himself quietly. I sat at my kitchen table in my house of 22 years, and I did not cry, because I had moved past the part of this where crying was the appropriate response. I was somewhere much colder and much clearer. I did the dishes. I went to my room. I called my son in Phoenix. His name is Andre, and he has his father's way of listening, which means he doesn't say anything until he's sure he is understood. I told him everything, not just the lock, but the 3 years before the lock, the pavers, the study, the thermostat, all of it, the slow accumulation of small surrenders I had made because I thought I was keeping the peace. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Mom," he said, "you know what you need to do." "I do," I said. "Do you want me to come?" "Not yet," I said. "Let me start. I have a friend from church, A woman named Bertrice, who had been a paralegal for 31 years before she retired. We have walked together on Saturday mornings for going on 12 years. She knows things, Bertrice does, the kind of things that don't make it into ordinary conversation, but that matter enormously when you need them. She knew about property rights. She knew about what happens when family members occupy a home without a lease. I called her the next morning. "They're not tenants," she said when I explained. "No lease, no rent, nothing in writing." That actually complicates things in some ways and simplifies things in others. "Tell me the part that simplifies," I said. She did. In the state of Georgia, occupants without a lease who have not been paying rent can be asked to leave. There is a process. It involves notice, written, formal, served properly. It is not the same as evicting a tenant, but it is a legal process, and it has teeth. "You need an attorney," Bertrice said. "Not to scare you, just because you need it done correctly." I called an attorney that afternoon. Her name was Ms. Moore, Okonkwo, and she was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s. With reading glasses she kept pushing up with one finger. She asked me to walk her through the situation from the beginning. I did. She took notes. She did not show surprise at anything I told her, which I appreciated. She had heard versions of this before. "What is your goal?" she asked when I finished. "I want my house back," I said. "I want my daughter to be able to stay if she chooses to. I want her husband out, and I want a legal structure around all of it so this never happens again." She nodded slowly. "That's clear," she said. "I can work with clear." We talked for an hour. She explained the notice process, the timeline, the documentation I would need. She was direct and practical, and she did not once suggest that I consider the family dynamics or soften my approach or give it more time. She simply told me the steps. I left her office and I sat in my car for a while in the parking lot. I thought about Raymond. I thought about the 22 years. I thought about the garden he planted that was now a concrete patio. I thought about standing on my own front porch with a bag of groceries and a key that no longer worked. Then I started the car and drove home. Monique knew something had changed. I'm not sure she knew exactly what, but she could read me the way daughters read. Mothers, the old particular fluency of it. She kept looking at me over the next few days with a question in her face she didn't ask out loud. Her husband noticed nothing. He moved through the house the same way he always did, owning the space with his shoulders, his volume, his certainty. He had started having people over, colleagues, he called them, to the living room on Friday evenings. The first Friday it happened, I came downstairs to find 5 men I didn't know, sitting in my living room with takeout containers on my coffee table and a football game on my television at a volume I couldn't have a conversation over. He introduced me to them as my mother-in-law. She lives here too, with a small gesture in my direction, the kind of gesture people make toward furniture that has been tastefully placed. I smiled. I went back upstairs. I called Miss Okonkwo and told her I was ready to move forward. The notice was served on a Wednesday morning. I was not there when it happened. Miss Okonkwo had advised me that it was better if I wasn't, and I understood the wisdom of that. I had driven to Bertrice's house the evening before with a small bag, just my things for a night or two, and we sat on her back porch and drank sweet tea and talked about things that had nothing to do with any of this. And it was the most peaceful evening I had spent in longer than I could clearly remember. My son had flown in. He was at a hotel nearby and he called me when it was done. "The process server left at 9:40, he said. "Monique called me. She's upset. She wanted to know if you were coming home." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you'd be back when you were ready," he said. I thought about my daughter's face. I thought about all the times she had looked away. I thought about the Tuesday with the key, and the night I sat alone at my kitchen table after the dishes, and the long, slow years of small erosions. "How did he react?" I asked. Andre paused. He asked who authorized it. He said it wasn't legal. He said he wanted to speak to whoever was in charge. He can speak to Ms. Okonkwo, I said. That's what I told him, Andre said. The legal notice gave them 30 days. In Georgia, without a lease, without a rental agreement, that was the appropriate window for occupants in good standing. Ms. Okonkwo had worded it carefully. It named him specifically. It named the address. It cited the relevant code. It was not angry. It did not have to be. Monique called me that afternoon. I let it ring twice and then I answered, because she was my daughter and I was not at war with her. "Mum," she said. "Mum, what is happening?" "I think you know," I said gently. She was crying. She said she hadn't known about the locks, that he had done it without telling her. I believe her about that. I also believe that there were many things she had told herself she didn't know, the way I had told myself things were fine, long after they weren't. We had both made accommodations. The difference was that it was my house. "What about me?" she asked. Do I have to go too?" "No," I said. "Not unless you choose to." She was quiet for a long moment. "He won't leave without a fight," she said. "He doesn't have a choice," I said. "This isn't a negotiation, sweetheart. This is a legal process. His argument is not with me, it's with the paperwork." She cried a little more. I sat with it. I didn't try to fix it. Some things you have to let your children feel their way through. He tried several things. He called my son and told him I was being irrational, that this was a family matter that didn't require lawyers, that he would have the locks changed back as a gesture of goodwill. Andre listened to all of it and then said, "The notice stands," and ended the call. He texted me twice. The first text said he thought we had a mutual understanding about the living situation. The second text, sent a few hours later, said he felt blindsided and hoped we could have a conversation as adults. I forwarded both to Ms. Okonkwo. He made no payments, offered no documentation, produced nothing that suggested any legal claim to the property, because he had none. On the 23rd day, a moving truck appeared in my driveway. I know because Bertrice drove me past. I didn't stop. We kept going, drove to a diner on the other side of town, had eggs and biscuits and coffee, and by the time I got back the truck was gone. He was gone. Monique stayed. We have had many conversations since then. Long ones, some of them difficult. She has told me things about those 3 years that I didn't know, and some that I half knew. She has said that she knew things were wrong for a long time and didn't know how to name it, and I understand that because I felt the same way. We have been careful with each other in a way we weren't before. Which sounds like loss, but doesn't feel like it. It feels like honesty. I think honesty can feel like tenderness when you get there. She has a job now, a real one, full-time, benefits. She has started talking about an apartment. I have told her there is no rush. I mean it, and I don't mean it. I mean it in the way of love, that she is welcome as long as she needs, and I don't mean it in the way that I also know she needs to rebuild something of her own, and I think she knows it too. We don't talk about him much. When we do, it is briefly, and then we move on. He is the chapter we both know the ending of. I have thought a great deal about what I would tell someone who came to me with a version of this story, someone who opened their home in good faith and watched it become something they no longer recognized, someone who kept making accommodations until they had accommodated themselves out of their own peace. I would tell them this: you are allowed to name what is happening. You are allowed to call a thing what it is. Saying, "This is not okay," does not mean you don't love your family. It means you understand that love without limits is not love, it is exhaustion dressed up as patience. It is something that will empty you if you let it. I would also tell them the law is not the enemy of the family. Sometimes it is the only language a situation will hear. There is no shame in using it, there is no shame in having it on your side, and I would tell them the part I learned the hardest. The longer you wait to set a limit, the more costly it becomes. Not because the other person is necessarily cruel, though sometimes they are, but because silence is a kind of permission. People learn the shape of what you will allow, and they fill it. That is human nature. It is not always malicious, but the result is the same. I know that now. I knew it too late for some things. Raymond's study, the garden, 3 years of my own comfort, but not too late for my house, not too late for myself. I replaced the lock the week after he left. I stood in the doorway of Raymond's study for a long time, and then I opened the windows and I let the air come through. I ordered a cedar sachet online, the same scent Raymond used on his tools. I put it on the windowsill. I watched my programs that night with the volume where I liked it. Not loud, not soft, just exactly right. My grandson came in around 9 and sat with me the way he used to when he was younger, before the years got strange. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Grandma, about all of it." I put my hand on his arm. He is still young, and there is still time for him to learn what it means to take up space in another person's life and still leave room for them. I hope what he saw taught him something. I think it did. My daughter came in later, after the news, and she brought chamomile tea without my asking, because she knows I have it before bed. She sat across from me and we drank it together, and the house was quiet in the way I had forgotten it could be. Not empty, not lonely, just mine. That is what peace sounds like when you have had to fight for it. It sounds like the ordinary. It sounds like your own name on your own door, the volume on your own television, the key that turns exactly the way it should. I am home, and I will not be moved from it again.